Thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to Zinier Field Talk and Tacos. In this webinar summer series, you join us for an insightful discussion as we uncover practical solutions and strategies to accelerate revenue velocity and cultivate long-lasting customer relationships. My name is Rahul Hingal. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Growth at Zinier. Today's session is the first of our many planned discussions. In today's discussion, we will discuss how we can accelerate revenue collection through the power of process automation. It is easier to use a particular industry as an example, so we will use the telecom industry today for context setting. Before we begin, let me briefly introduce my colleague here, Rakesh Sharma. Rakesh is the head of sales and business development for US. Based in San Francisco, Rakesh has extensive experience solving operational problems in asset heavy industries like telecommunications, energy, utilities, and manufacturing. And he has worked with organizations of all sizes, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Throughout his professional life, Rakesh has passionately believed in the value of technology to make the life of our frontline workers a little easier, from the warehouse to field operators to engineers and technicians. Welcome, Rakesh.
Thanks, Rahul. Thanks for the introduction.
I hope you have had a strong cup of coffee today.
I did. I actually did have a strong cup of coffee from my local cafe. So good.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Rakesh, let's jump into the mix of things here, right? As everyone here knows, there can be unforeseen hurdles that crop up between revenue booking and collection, right? During
Yeah.
this session, we want to address accelerated revenue collection through process automation in the telecom industry, where you have a fairly large experience, right?
Yeah.
So, this is focused on two critical questions that impact the success, especially around maybe the fiber installation projects, right?
Mhm.
So firstly, we will explore the effective strategies to minimize the time between booking or sign up and installations,
Yeah.
ultimately boosting the revenue velocity and ensure faster project completion, right? The second key theme would be a very common problem that is that is faced in the industry, which is to do with pre-go live churn, commonly referred to as pre-install cancellations.
Yep.
So we will examine how a more cohesive customer experience can probably reduce pre-install cancellations.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that kind of makes sense because, when we talk to our clients, especially in the telecom industry, one of the key things that they're looking at is how do you create a more sticky customer experience, right? And so certainly one of the ways that they're looking to kind of up their game is actually kind of create process automation across the entire board in order to do a couple of key aspects, right? So first of all, create a more consumer-like experience, a consumer app-like experience, because as a whole, as a consumer, what our experience is now driven by are applications like Uber, DoorDash, a lot of other kind of consumer apps, which basically like provide that sticky customer experience. And then, so that's kind of shifted consumer expectations and really kind of driving that seamless flow between the consumer and the brands is actually an important part of, kind of creating that cohesive experience.
Yeah. So I think you already touched on this a little bit, right? But considering like the telecom industry, right?
Mhm.
Just to summarize, like what processes are ideal for disruption right now and that might have the highest impact.
Yeah, exactly. So just to kind of continue on that point, right? The telecommunication industry has kind of shifted quite a bit, especially starting in '96, where the industry started getting deregulated, right? And so the consumer preference actually became quite significant, and so right throughout the last, I would say, like 20 odd years, essentially, you've seen an emergence of uh, emergence of competitive carriers and new entrants into the entire field. And that's actually, what that's led into is a competition for consumers, which has then kind of led to, people prioritizing consumer experience and customer experience as one of the most important drivers of the business. So what we're seeing is essentially organizations prioritizing NPS and CSAT scores in order to create that customer stickiness, and also as an avenue to essentially future revenue growth, right? So that
Right.
they can increase, ARPU, which is average revenue per user, and further kind of keep ramping up their revenue cycles, right? So that's kind of one of the key things.
Right.
So on that note, one of the things that we've kind of seen is automation in that kind of helps create more seamless experiences I kind of alluded to earlier. And that also kind of helps, organizations kind of deliver a very high customer experience to the end customers because, and this is where we see the field service aspect being very critical because field service technicians are the face of the brand
Right.
with the consumers today, right? So that's kind of just the gist of what we see.
Right. So, with the rapid expansion in the telecom industry around the world, not only in the US, right? Because of all the global push to have more broadband, more fiber laid out across the globe, right? You think can how can companies differentiate their offering, in front of the customers and overall with a focus on the on revenue being the North Star?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really good question. So I'll just provide like a quick anecdote, right? So the first time when I moved to the US, this is about 20 odd years back, a little bit over 20 years ago. When I had to get cable, let's say cable, TV and internet and all that stuff kind of installed in my apartment. I think I called one of the providers, and they gave me a whole day. I had to sit in my apartment for the whole day. And I don't know if you had like a similar experience, but
Yeah.
I had to wait in my apartment for a whole day, and this is before work from home, right? So
Yeah.
there was no way for me to go back into office or whatever. So literally, like the guy showed up at some point during the day, and he installed everything, and we kind of I had to pay the installation services and things like that and whatnot, and then kind of he went away, and then I had to pay $120 a month, right, or something to that degree, right?
Yeah.
And obviously there were outages and things like that, right? So that colored my whole experience from an initial standpoint, but I guess long story short, the customer experience has kind of shifted quite drastically, right? So now the clients that we speak with are actually looking to provide a very specific time that the technicians will actually show up so that I don't have to spend 4 hours of my day just sitting idly at home, right?
Right.
And so that's actually a very, very important part, and that's actually a step change in the entire organization. Something as simple as that actually requires a lot of background kind of
Right.
automation, right? So that's where we see like the shift, right, happening.
Mm.
And what that also does is, from a revenue collection cycle standpoint, right? What we're seeing is that the amount of time that it takes for people to, start their service or sign up for the service and going into the actual turn up of the service earlier used to be measured in weeks, right? Now it's being measured in days. And with further automation, that can actually go down even further, right? So that's what our client's North Star really is. How do you reduce the amount of time that it takes from the customer sign up, right, all the way to turn ups, and how do you make that as short as possible? Because that actually leads to faster revenue collection, and we're seeing actually improvements of almost 20-30% just from a revenue cash to cash collection cycle, right?
Okay.
And that's actually like an important part of what automation can really help deliver.
Yeah. So, funny story. I actually have two internet services at my house, right? I'm a bit spoiled,
Uh-huh.
but also because in this world of working remotely with all the smart devices, I just cannot rely on one. And for me, internet is an essential service. It is a utility now, right?
Yes.
If it goes away, sure, I have my mobile that I can use as a hotspot, but I'm always on calls, right? So I have two, right? For both of them, it took me more than a week for the service to turn on, right? First
Mhm.
there was a technique. First there was somebody after I signed up. a couple of days later, somebody turned up to dig through my entire backyard and lay the cable, right? And I was not at all informed, right? Suddenly somebody showed up. They were not even wearing the uniform of the particular company, right? And I was totally caught by surprise. And I later on I realized that, oh, these are contractors, right? Then the second and they laid the cable. And I said, oh, should I turn on my router? Where's my router? And they had no idea. They were told that, oh, this is the only job that they have. And then another 3 days later, then somebody else came to, bring in the router and kind of set it up, right? And the entire communication was pretty off, right? So, and I had to. Fortunately, I was there on the day that the fiber drop happened, but the other day I had to stay at home. I had to go to office, but I had to cancel everything and stay at home, right?
Yeah.
So it was a challenge, right? Uh, so overall, like I wouldn't say I had the best customer experience during that entire process, but maybe there are things that could be done apart from just a revenue velocity perspective, right? Maybe there are ways in which process automation can help the customer NPS and customer satisfaction as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's actually what you highlighted is actually like the core of what we as consumers expect versus what service providers can deliver, right? So just keeping us informed of just the steps, right? Hey, someone's coming out to dig up your yard. Oh, hey, someone's coming in with the router. Like just keeping the consumer informed of that, the step-by-step processes will actually increase that customer responsiveness, because what happens is that now consumers, or now as a customer, I expect my service providers to basically provide me with updates on a regular basis. And not just that, it helps me plan my day better, right? So I know, okay, I don't have to show up here, or I don't have to be at this particular place at this particular time. So I can plan my day better. And also it's a psychology thing, right? So as a consumer or a customer, if I'm seeing my service provider actually provide a higher quality of service, even before I start my service, I have a higher propensity to stay with the provider, and not just stay with the provider, but also accept additional services, right? As they come up. So there's like this has benefits basically that go beyond just revenue and collection, cash velocity aspect, right? So you're actually like getting into long-term customer life cycle, and
Right.
how do you actually reduce churn in the long term, right? So driving that is actually like a very important aspect as well.
Yeah. I like the term that you used early on. You said every consumer, power in the hands of the consumer, right?
Mhm.
And in this day and age, a consumer expects an Uber-like experience.
Yes, exactly. And that's actually like a very, very important thing, right? Because driving that cohesion is I think like paramount. And that ultimately is the North Star, right? So as long as organizations are being governed by that, I think that, they're the ones that are actually like successful, right, as a whole.
Yeah. See, then switching gears a bit, right? Another common problem in the industry is, pre-install cancellations, where
Mhm.
somebody signed up and people don't have the patience to wait for 7, 8 days for your service to turn up, to switch on, right? Like even me, I was almost ready to cancel the service, and then the actual reason that I have two internet service providers is because I got a pretty sweet deal on one of
Yeah,
them, the one that I tried to cancel, right? So
yeah.
I just kept it on, right? But how can you reduce these pre-install cancellations? Because I think and maybe you have the industry statistics. I think it is a fairly large number. It is a fairly big problem.
Yeah. No, it's a huge issue. So actually, we were talking to one of our clients, right? And one of the things that was very striking was that they had statistics of cancellations within the first. Let's say it took 30 days. If it took 30 days for a person to sign up versus 45 days, which is a 15-day, like 2-week period, right? That 2-week period of additional delay actually increased the cancellation rate by almost uh, I think 2 or 3 times, right? So what that means is that my patience kind of runs out, and essentially that's the problem with that is that that's actually driving churn rates up.
Right.
So the sooner you can reduce that amount of time, right, that it takes from turn up, from sign up to turn up, right? The more you reduce that period of time, the less chance that the customer has to churn and essentially leave your revenue books. And at the same time, it also allows you to basically like provide a higher level of customer service, right? So it kind of boils into the same thing. And so one of the key ways that you can kind of drive that cohesion is essentially through automating some of those processes across the board, right? And
Yeah.
that essentially can help drive that reduction in PIC, which is pre-installation cancellations, and at the same time, kind of again comes down to customer lifetime value. Helps increase that over the lifetime of the customer itself.
Right. Exactly. And that the example that you gave, that was more in a B2B setting, in a corporate setting. With B2C, the dynamic is even more complex, right? Because the consumers, the end consumers, they don't have as much patience. They would not be waiting for such a long time.
Exactly, and that's basically the conclusion, right?
Right.
So the more you delay the sign up or the turn up of the end customer, the higher the chance, the higher the probability of them leaving for another service, right? And you
Right.
want to prevent that as much as possible.
Okay. So my last question for you for today, right? Uh, in the context of the telecom industry, what pitfalls have you seen companies take when they consider their field services? Since field service in the telecom industry is at the center of this new world, the dynamics have changed quite a lot, and with the expansion, the field services become a very integral part. Any pitfalls that you have seen companies make?
Yeah, so I think one of the things and this is actually like kind of like an important thing that I've kind of just observed, right? So we went to a customer site. They're up in New York, and I had the pleasure of kind of working with the not working actually, just basically like kind of going on a few field trips with the technicians, right? And I think when we talk about field services, right, we oftentimes forget the human element, right? We talk
Yeah.
about in terms of productivity, cost efficiencies, revenue, whatever it might be, right? But this is actually a very funny thing. So went with him on a few visits, and one of the visits was, it was a pretty simple kind of fiber installation job. So he went in. He's like, "This is just going to take me 10 minutes."
Yeah.
We walked in. Sure enough, within about 10 minutes, he was done. But the couple that were there, they were an elderly couple, right? So one of the things which was kind of interesting was, he sat down with them and basically helped them not just kind of walk them through the new kind of fiber and what that means for them, but also, help solve issues like, their Apple TV issues or, the Apple password, Mac
Yeah.
login, and, just things like that. And actually, he ended up spending about, not, the first 10 minutes was just kind of getting the installation set up. The next 50 minutes, he had an hour appointment, was actually just chit chatting, talking with people, solving their kind of tech issues. He was basically like a mobile geek squad kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was actually pretty amazing, because what that does now is actually, now, as I said, the field service technicians are the face of the company, right?
Yeah.
So now it's elevated the status of the entire company in front of these customers, because now what's happened is that they're looked at not just as a, as a internet guy, but as like a technologist who can actually help solve some of these common problems, right? So I
Yes.
think the most important thing about field service and field service technician is not, the productivity and the cost efficiencies and things like
Yeah.
that, but also kind of being the face of the company and the
Correct.
ambassadors of the brand, which is actually like, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah. I can so imagine my mom being there and catching hold of anybody, a technician out there who's maybe fixing the water pump or even checking the water reading and asking him to help set her Netflix account up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that we find through and through. And this is actually what we're finding is not just on the telecom side, right? This is in
Right.
any or in most consumer
Facing
industries today,
industries.
right?
Yeah.
what you actually tend to find is that that human element is the one that's actually the one that's paramount, and that's what I
Yeah.
think field service really kind of that's the
Yeah.
power of field service in general, right?
Right. So see, two conclusions on that relate to some of our mantras as well, right? One is that at Zinier, we believe in the power of building meaningful relationships with our clients. Like the example that you gave about you being out in the field in New York, right? The second one is another saying that we use, right? The journey only begins when you go live, right?
Yes, yes,
Till you
exactly.
go live, there is you want to get there as soon as possible and have the best customer experience that will get you there.
Yep, yep, precisely, precisely. And I think that we look at it across like different facets, but yeah, I think the customer facet is probably the most important thing that we also that we have to value, right? So
Okay,
yeah.
excellent. So for all our attendees, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our conversation. We hope you found it helpful. Next time on Field Talk and Tacos, I'll be speaking again with Rakesh, but this time the topic would be how to transform customer experience using the power of real-time notifications. Please share this episode, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. And thank you again for joining us today.